I'm Scott Fishman.
I'm John Dwoskin.
And this is the 7-Minute Salesman.
Welcome, everybody.
Hey, Johnny, what's going on? Welcome back.
Fish, thanks. Welcome back to you too. Welcome back.
Man,
how's your day?
My day is good. I feel great that that virus that had me for the last 2 weeks and you for the 2 weeks prior killed it.
I know. It was a beast.
It reminded me of when we were kids, when me and AC would get in trouble together. Our parents would ground us on subsequent weeks. So it was like double the punishment.
That was smart thinking of that back in the day.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Jerks, man. Parents out there, don't do that to your kids.
Yeah, that requires a lot of thinking. I'm impressed with that.
I got in trouble a lot of times.
They had to come up with a different strategy.
Exactly. Cool and unusual punishment.
Yeah, that's funny. So what should we talk about today, Fish?
Well, John, I think before we got on the podcast, you and I were talking a little bit about picking up the phone and the importance of it. And I was interested in kind of hearing what you had to say about that.
Yeah. So I think it's amazing how many people I see as I'm coaching and training, how many people don't pick up the phone. The picking up the phone to do research, picking up the phone to call just anybody, really. I mean, where there's a strategy behind the outgoing calls or a strategy for the incoming calls, and how to really just effectively, get business, get meetings, move the ball forward. And it just amazes me how many times people aren't utilizing the phone to their full capacity.
Yeah, we've got so many tools, and it's one of the major tools, and it's a forgotten one. I think.
Yeah.
The phone, having the ability to have our cell phone in our hand and have so much access to information, and having a computer on our desk or a tablet on our desk, I think we fall onto that crutch quite a bit. And it's almost like when we were kids, when our parents would say the TV was the boob tube, right? I think that might have been when our parents were kids.
Yeah.
TV was a boob tube, it'll dumb you down. I think these tools that we have, some of them are dumbing us down sales-wise, where we forget about just using the old school methods that actually work.
Right. And we forget about kind of tapping into our own knowledge base and understanding where we as an individual need to grow our skill set and best practices. So when we're making that call or taking an incoming call, we are in a position to know the questions we want to ask, the lines, the words, the research we need to discuss, so we can get a conversation stimulated to generate that next level of business.
Right. And you and I actually were talking a little bit about someone that you've worked with, and it mirrored someone that I have, that I work with in my division over at my company as well, where he spends a lot of time researching online.
Correct.
Finding all this data. So he'll spend 45 minutes before the call, putting everything together. Then he makes a call, and he either doesn't get someone on the phone, so he just wasted 45 minutes, or he gets someone on the phone and they rush him off because they're super busy and they need to push the appointment back. But it literally is 45 minutes of his day for nothing, like no results.
Right. So I want to comment on that. I want to chat about that. I think it's worth driving down that road. I've never used that phrase before, but I don't know. But
buckle up.
Buckle up. Right, exactly. But I think one of the things that's important is sales with phones requires a lot of consistency. And there is study after study that tells us that if we role play, we will double, if not triple, if not quadruple our business. So all this time goes into doing research, but not a lot of time, not enough time goes into actually role playing what to do with that research and how to actually have a conversation with somebody with that information. And so I just want to make that comment, and then I want to comment on 45 minutes of research. Your research should be done the night before or the Sunday for the upcoming week for all the calls you need to make, or at least 80 to 85% of that research. So when you sit down to make calls, you are pounding out the calls. CRMs, technology is so good today that you should be able to just pound out phone calls. And
Right.
in your world, that does happen.
Absolutely. And the way I look at it, I think I challenge people, as crazy as it sounds, do 1 minute of research. Because if you think about what happens, John, if I'm chasing you down and I know everything about you before I call you, I don't need to ask you any questions. But remember, one of the things, it's classic Dale Carnegie, people want to talk about themselves. So if I get you on the phone and I've done 1 minute of research and I know, hey, you've been in business for 5 years, that's literally all I know. I can ask you questions about your business that will get you talking. You're going to like me a hell of a lot more. There might be like one iota of you that says, yeah, this guy didn't do his research, but I'm going to actually preface that. Be like, John, I didn't want to spend hours researching you, so I knew everything about you. I really wanted to hear from the horse's mouth. Tell me about your business.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, Fish. And just to kind of drill down on that scenario that you just gave, it's so important that, and I think people, when I say this, people, a lot of times people say, well, I don't want to script because then I'm going to sound like a robot. And I say, yeah, you're right. You can't follow a script. We've talked about that in past shows. It's good to have as a foundation to kind of get you started, but you can understand the archetype of the person you're calling. You can understand the client type. You can then understand, based on different client types, different questions that you open-ended questions that you can ask that person, and ways to stimulate interest and discussion with that specific person, and then be able to pivot in a conversation when things change. And so that requires a lot of work and a lot of prep time and a lot of role playing. And to me, you can do that. And so if you mentally prepare and have the right mindset, and then can walk in and just have a couple starters, then at least you have something to fall back on.
Right. And if you think about just from a time management standpoint, if you do that role play and you're practicing this and you're planning it out, you're doing that once for every call you're making that day versus doing it for 45 minutes before each call.
Yeah. Right. Let's talk about that a little bit, Fish, because a lot of people do that, so they end up making, 15, 20 calls a day, doing tons of research. And I don't really think, I've never really truly believed 90% of the people who really say they're doing that much research. Because if you're doing that much research, you're usually kind of, doing other things.
Yeah. You're researching Facebook, you're researching your day trading, you're researching your grocery list, you're researching
Correct.
anything else but work. Let's call a spade on this one.
Right. So a lot of times you're giving the 1 minute, which I think is great. But really, I don't think people spend more than 5-10 minutes maybe doing research. Right. I worked with a lot of salespeople who were previous engineers, who do a little bit more research just because of the way they're wired from an engineer mindset. Other than that, I don't really believe that people are doing as much research as they say.
Amen, brother.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
So how do we break that? How do we break that habit? Like, let's maybe give a formula on how people should be thinking about calls, picking up the phone, incoming calls, to kind of put into action tomorrow.
Well, I would say time block it. The first thing I would do is make a short list of the people that you would like to contact in a perfect world. Here's the 10, 15, 20, 50 people I want to speak with today. And then I would role play that one time like we talked about.
Yeah.
Person next to me, and we would go back and forth. We would role play that one phone call and figure out what we're going to say and how we're going to roll into it, and whether we're going to use my idea of saying, hey, I didn't do a ton of research on you up front because I didn't want to prejudge you, or some other method of how you're going to get the information out, but role play it once and roll into it that way versus going through over and over and over again. That's the first thing I would do. And then I would time block my day. I would say, okay, I'm going to prospect from 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. Everyone East Coast or Eastern time zone and Central time zone.
Yeah.
Then I would set appointments for later in the afternoon or whenever they could speak. And then I would do the exact same thing with my Mountain and Pacific time. Maybe start calling at 11:30, give myself time, plan out appointments. At that point, then I would do a little bit more research for the hot people that I spoke with, and I would role play those calls as well.
I love that. I see a lot of companies, use kind of like a red, yellow, green, color mindset, color coding, just so it gives them. And I love what you just talked about, because sometimes you have so many names that if you don't give them different significance and maybe in some type of visual way, I think that's a big game changer. But I love the whole, what you're talking about. Hey, 1 minute research, and I'm just going to add it and do a 1 minute role play. A role play does not need to be sitting in a room and doing it for 20 minutes. I mean, it can be, and it's very effective, but it can be a 1 minute role play. Hey, Fish, I got to call this type of clientele and this, that, and the other. And, they're on the West Coast, so they think a little, I think they think and act a little, differently. Can you just role play? All you need is a word or a line or a question, and just build the muscle memory and really get the confidence so you walk in with a stronger mindset.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of something. Just this week, as a group, we watched this TED Talk by General McChrystal, or maybe it's Admiral McChrystal. I apologize, but it was amazing. It was all about learning to lead. And he talked about when he did a parachute jump, when he had to do this literally every single week. And when he did a parachute jump, there was a certain way they were supposed to land. It was like start at your ankle, roll your body through, kind of almost like somersault at the end. And then voila, you landed. But the funny thing is, he said in however many jumps he had done over 30, 40 years that he was in the military, he never actually landed like that. So to me, that was, we're always planning for the perfect landing.
Right.
But, also improvise. So when you think about, we're role playing that first minute, like you said, of the phone call, and then it's a conversation from there, because that's what we need, that opener. And then it's just a conversation with a human being. We don't need to role play 15 minutes of conversation.
Right. But I think, again, the pivot, hold on, that's my dog barking. Give me 5 seconds. Hold on. Sorry about that, folks. But I think what you just said is critical, because I think a lot of times, and the reason I like the 1 minute role play is because the reason I think people hesitate to pick up the phone is they don't know how to get to through the first minute to basically have the conversation.
Right.
And so that's the toughest transition piece. And so if you can, a lot of people I think are much better at the pivoting and being nimble 1 minute in than getting through the first minute.
Exactly.
So I would love to see everybody commit to a 1 minute role play on an ongoing basis for calls throughout the day, and 1 minute of research, and prepping on Sunday or the night before for your calls for the week or the next day.
Right. Now, John, I do want to actually touch on something else. When we talked about this topic, this is the first thing that came to mind for me, which is great that we're both kind of thinking the same way, is picking up the phone when someone actually calls you.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if this has happened. I mean, it's happened to you and I together, where I call you and then I get your voicemail. You call me back a minute later, get my voicemail. And it was just, and literally we were calling for nothing. I was calling you to say hi.
Right.
So if you think about when someone calls you, it's this crazy, you mentioned it, it's like a 1990s mindset of, I want to look super busy, so I'm going to send you to voicemail. But nowadays, someone sends you to voicemail, or you send someone a voicemail, I should say, and then you call them back once you know what they're calling about, because that's the other thing. You might be afraid of taking that phone call because you want to know what they want first. So you want to sound smart when you call them back. But then now you have to call them back. They're calling the next person, so you're getting their voicemail. Or even worse, they might be calling your competitor because they pick up the phone.
Yeah, I think that's so important, Fish. I mean, in today's world, people want instant access, and nobody cares how busy you are. They just want to feel like your only client.
Right.
And you've been, we've talked about on past shows, and you're talking about today about time blocking. We all need to always be evolving our time management skills and how we time block and how we spend our time. Because if you aren't in a position to make people feel like their only client, like they're your only client, then somebody else will. And that's so 1950s to like send them the voicemail and this, that, like if you're on the phone, of course, but if you can't, shoot them a text. If you're not in a meeting, like, hey, I'm in a meeting, I'll call you back in 15 minutes, and then do it, and then follow up with that. Or have a voice message on your voicemail that says, your call is very important to me. If I'm not answering this phone, it's because I'm in a meeting, and I will call you back in less than 20 minutes or whatever that piece is.
Right. And I'll share something. I actually recently fired a client, and I hate doing that. It's one of those things where it sucks, but this person was very evasive, didn't send a ton of business my way, so it was taking up a lot of my time. And every time I called her, the gatekeeper I would say, hey, is so-and-so there? The first question is, let me check, who is this? I would say my name, and then they'd come back and be like, oh, she's busy. Or literally say, oh, she's...
I hate that, yeah.
So it's like, did she screening just my call or screening everybody's calls? And after a while, I was like, you know what? This relationship isn't working out because I need to get you on the phone every once in a while, and you play this game with me. So we're done playing the game. I can't handle it. So she, at the end of the day, she's now been demoted.
Good. Good. Yeah. I mean, and I think a good lesson from that I hope people take on the call is, don't do that. Create a standard where if somebody's calling you and they're, your person who answers the phone says, has raised the standard of your operation to create a little bit more of an experience. Hey, Scott, such and such really wants to talk to you. They're tied up today. Can we schedule a call tomorrow? Or can they call you back at a certain time? When that happens, here's a good best practice. Say, okay, well, is there, can I call the person back at 4:00 tomorrow or 4:10 tomorrow? Like try to get something on the books so if you have to chase them or not. If they're serious about it, they'll put it on the books.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, good for you. It's hard to fire a client. I think a lot of times people have a really difficult time with it. So kudos to you for making that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And the worst part about it is I actually trained the gatekeeper not to do that for her before I fired her. I let him know that what he was doing was wrong.
You're such a mensch, Fish. That's a good thing. All right. I think a lot of nuggets today. Don't be afraid. If you're in sales, pick up the phone. It is your best friend, and it is your growth to the growth of your business. The phone will lead you to face-to-face meetings, proposals, BOVs, lots of business. And the average, you got to call someone an average of 17 to 20 times before they'll call you back. Don't get discouraged. Don't take it personally. Keep on calling and practice what you're going to talk about, ask and say, and have fun with it.
Right. And remember, folks, you're not going to do anything, write a business. I'd say write a loan because I'm in mortgages. It's not going to happen by just surfing Instagram and sending messages. The only people that sell stuff on Instagram are people that sell stuff on Instagram. You're not doing that. There's a reason you're there. You're paid to do your job. You're paid as a salesperson. If you weren't needed, they wouldn't have you. So it's time to earn our keep and not try to just ease out and use the quick and easy method that we think is going to work, because really putting in the work is what works.
Amen. All right. Love that. I agree. 100%. Amen.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. Now, no excuses. It's time to put everything you listen to into action. Stop bullshitting yourself. Stop lying to yourself. Stop listening and doing nothing with this information. Take this information, implement it into your day, kick some ass, grow your business, grow your sales, make more money, have more fun, have a better life, period, the end.
What he said.